Analysis of Easter 1916 by William Butler Yeats. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn. All changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful she rode to harriers? This man had kept a school, and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone, to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horsehoof slides on the brim, and the horse pleasures within it. The long-legged moorhens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse, Macdonough and Macbride, and Connolly and Pierce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. Well, this is one of the fundamental political poems of the 20th century. Yeats was not particularly a political person, and especially in his earlier days he had made his name with the Celtic Twilight poems, talking about the mythology of Ireland. However, by this time he'd well and truly grown out of all that, and this is a true political poem. It's worth saying a little bit about Yeats and his view of Irish nationalism. Yeats came from the Anglo-Irish. His was an Anglo-Irish family, which is to say, if you go back, his was one of those families that came from England to rule Ireland. However, his family was well integrated into Ireland, and Yeats was an Irish nationalist. He believed in independence for Ireland. However, he didn't believe in violence, and he didn't believe in revolutions that killed people. He wanted to see change happen in a peaceful way. But maybe in this poem he begins to question himself. He begins to question if his approach is the right one. He begins to see that maybe these revolutionary leaders who he knew personally had perhaps uh, started something and had become symbols of of a new nationalism that would lead to Irish independence, while his kind of gradualism was leading nowhere. So there's a lot of self-questioning in this poem. The poet is questioning himself and questioning his knowledge of these people. He knew them, and perhaps he's thinking he got it wrong about these people, and he got it wrong about the best strategy for Ireland to attain independence. And it begins with him talking about seeing these men who conducted the revolution on the streets on a daily basis, really, and how he kind of sneered at them, really. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite, meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite, meaningless words. So he had little to do with these people. Perhaps he thought they were violent people who any reasonable Democrat should have nothing to do with. He would exchange words with them, a nod of the head, but nothing serious. Their way of doing things, their way of trying to attain change in Ireland was too different, and he couldn't really socialize with them. He goes on to say, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club. So he even made fun of them, and when he got to his club he would say, oh, I saw McBride, I saw McDonough, I saw Pierce, and tell some funny story that was to their disadvantage in the club. Why? Because he was sure that they and I but lived where motley is worn, so that they were not serious people. He kind of, maybe he is questioning himself here, thinking, well, yeah, I've been trying to attain Irish independence peacefully, but maybe deep down I knew I couldn't really do anything, and I didn't think that they could do anything either. Nothing would come of it, and we were all just talking. We were all clowns. We all lived where motley is worn. However, that's changed now. All changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Now this refrain keeps recurring, and it is at the end of every stanza, and it really emphasizes the way the poet is questioning himself and his earlier views about these people, and the way change could be attained in Ireland. Now he goes on to speak about the individual people he knew who were the leaders of the revolution. The woman is Countess Marker Witz, and he knew her personally, and here he tells us quite a lot about her. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful she rode to harriers? So, seems to be saying his old view anyway was women should not get involved in political matters, and she her voice, which was beautiful when she was young, became shrill through shouting and making political arguments all the time. So his earlier view, at least, was women shouldn't get involved in politics. But perhaps he's questioning himself now. Maybe he was wrong. He goes on to talk then about the leader of the revolutionaries, Patrick Pearse, who was a schoolteacher. This man had kept a school and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This is then MacDonagh, who was Patrick Pearse's helper, and MacDonagh was also a playwright and a poet, and both Pearse and MacDonagh are artistic people with artistic natures, and probably Yeats didn't think that they could ever achieve anything from a political point of view. Now he goes on to speak about Major John McBride, who was a man he had every reason to despise, because the woman he loved, Maud Gonne, had decided to marry him and reject Yeats. However, the marriage had ended in divorce, and McBride had acted very badly towards Maud Gonne and even his own child, the child he had with Maud Gonne. So Yeats goes on to say about him, "This other man I had dreamed a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born." So, yeah, he's questioning everything, really, questioning his own point of view, questioning strategies that may be right or may be wrong, and trying to get beyond himself as well. Just because he hates a man, it doesn't mean that he hasn't done something that is going to change things politically in Ireland. And if Yeats has to give credit to the other revolutionary leaders, then he will have to give credit to McBride too, because they have all been transformed. They have all become symbols for the independence of Ireland. They are not individuals anymore. In their deaths, in their execution by the English after the failure of the uprising, they become powerful symbols for the Irish people of independence for the future, and they are no longer individual personalities anymore. And this is true of McBride as much as it is of any of the others. They have all been changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Now he goes on to talk about how everything changes in nature, and yet some things don't change. The sense of purpose of these people, the ones who did this, no one else had any idea what they were going to do, and didn't think it would be of any use. However, the singleness of mind, the single purpose that they had, proved stronger and more effective than all the talking of the other people who, like Yeats, who wanted to change things in a slower, more gradual way. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone, to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds at range, from cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and the horse plashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. So while people were just going on with their lives and everything was changing minute by minute, and people concerned with their everyday concerns. These people didn't change at all. They just had a singularity of purpose, and they were like a stone that never changed while everything else was changing around it. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. So will it be enough? Will the sacrifice be enough? It seems to be changing people's points of view. The English hoped, of course, that it would completely destroy nationalism in Ireland, and the fear that people felt when they saw this failure and the leaders executed would mean that nobody else would try to do the same thing. However, it seems to have had Yeats' thinking, it seems to have had the opposite effect. Their deaths have become great symbols for Irish nationalism in the future, and they have become Irish heroes, and people will never forget their names. It's not important what they were like as individual people. It doesn't matter that MacBride, for example, was hated by Yeats. It's only important that now they're changed utterly. Everybody will remember them forever as great Irish patriots, great Irish heroes. So, people will murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, not night, but death. Was it needless, death after all? For England may keep faith, for all that is done and said. The English had said that they would negotiate some kind of independence with the Irish, and Yeats is saying maybe they will keep their word, but he doesn't seem to be very hopeful about it, and maybe he's more doubtful than ever now since the sacrifice of the revolutionary leaders and their execution by the English. We know their dreams enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse, MacDonagh and MacBride, and Connolly and Pierce, now and in time to be. Wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. So, wherever green is worn, wherever Irish nationalism, or wherever Irish nationalism can be found, the names of these people will never be forgotten. The ones who sacrificed themselves for Irish independence. They've been changed. He knew them. Yeats knew them personally. He used to make fun of them, and he hated MacBride, but he recognizes that everything has been changed in the act of sacrifice. They have become heroes, and people don't care what they are like or were like as individuals anymore. They are just Irish heroes and patriots who have become symbols for the struggle against England. And Yeats is thinking, yes, perhaps they were right. Maybe their way is the right way. Maybe I have been wrong. Maybe it's their sacrifice that will lead to Irish independence when what I was doing would have led nowhere. So it's a very self-questioning poem, and it certainly shows evidence of a great mind and a great ability to go beyond his own point of view and see people who he sometimes strongly disliked, despised even, in a new light, and recognize that what they have done has created something new, and that they have become symbols, great symbols for Irish independence and beacons of hope for the future. And he recognizes that perhaps his own point of view has been wrong, and maybe theirs was right, because wherever green is worn, everything is changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. The actual structure of the poem is mostly iambic tetrameter. However, as I mentioned before about Yeats's best poems, it's a very uneasy iambic rhythm, and it's all over the place and everywhere, and it can change from tracheic to tactile to anapest to spondy to at any time, and it's frequently not iambic, but most of it settles down into an uneasy iambic rhythm, an iambic tetrameter, which means 8 syllables to each of the lines. The rhyming scheme is pretty regular. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. There are many half rhymes, faces and houses, just a ES. Again, a very modern kind of effect. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite, meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite, meaningless words. So it's kind of A, B, C, D, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion. Around the fire at the club, jibe rhymed with club. So again, a half rhyme that gives that kind of uneasy effect. Being certain that they and I but lived where motley is warned, all changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So each stanza is iambic tetrameter and rhymes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So each stanza is long with 16 lines, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 lines. And like 4 quatrains, really, 4 groups of 4 lines with the rhyme scheme of A, B, all put together. And there are many half rhymes, faces, houses, repeated rhymes, words, half rhyme again, jibe and club. So it's a very uneasy kind of structure, actually, which reflects the self-questioning nature of the content. I would think that this is certainly one of the greatest poems of the 20th century, as is Sailing to Byzantium by Yeats. And while I might not agree with what Eliot said about Yeats being the greatest poet of the 20th century, because perhaps that honour belongs to Eliot himself, Yeats is undoubtedly right up there, and on some days I agree with Eliot and think he was the greatest. These two, Eliot and Yeats, are just above and beyond everybody else in the 20th century poetic pantheon. So I hope that this short analysis has been useful. Thank you.